So here we are again. We are at episode number 5 of our Unlisted series, where we discuss different projects that are being permitted and things that might be important to people who live locally.
In Salisbury, 238 Lafayette Road. Mm-hmm. It was previously a pretty rundown building. If you're on your way on Lafayette Road, you're almost to the circle that takes, go over the line in Seabrook. The cemetery is right over there.
Yep.
This is right before the line. It's been an abandoned property for quite some time. Mm-hmm. They are turning it into 24 studio apartments. 3-story multifamily, and very compact. It's most likely going to be workforce housing. Now, I don't know if that means that they're going to be workforce housing priced.
That's what what's that price? What's that price?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. But it's smaller efficiency style housing. Mm-hmm. In an area that is that's a pretty commercial area.
Yep.
So I would say I would be surprised if there was pushback on this, but there's always pushback about local development.
Because it's not in anybody's neighborhood, so to speak.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
There's, I think, one house right near there. All right, according to John, because he lives around the corner from there, it is under construction. I have been by there a bunch of times. I think I just didn't notice that it was under construction. Yeah. I'll see if I can find out more information before this airs and put it on the screen if we know what it's going, what the price of the apartments are going to be. But I'm really happy to see something like this in our area, because you don't see a lot of buildings that are just studio apartments.
We need workforce housing.
Right. And so,
if that's what this really is.
Right.
That's the question.
I mean, that's what it says it is, but I don't know for sure.
We will see.
But the fact that it's all, manageable, smaller style housing in a compact lot along a corridor that is easily accessible. I mean, if you didn't have a car, you could easily walk to downtown. I mean, that, commercial area of Seabrook and get a job and work right there. Yeah. I mean, Home Depot is probably a 5-minute walk. Mm-hmm. So for people who are...
Is it where that Mexican restaurant was? Anyway, never mind.
I don't know if
it was like a convenience store.
It was okay.
It's a crappy yellow building. I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay, great.
But it was for sale for the longest time. So this is the first Salisbury project I think that we've covered. So good to see that they are, moving in the right direction to try to bring some sort of affordable or reasonably priced housing to the area.
It's like we have 2 new projects in Groveland, and are they both rentals? That's what I'm trying to see.
Yes.
It says units. It doesn't say apartments. So the first one is a market rate rental, which is under construction. So that's good to know. It's already up and going.
Already been permitted.
Yep. It is near 97 off Salem Street in Groveland.
Yep. On your way to Bradford.
Yep. 86 1-bedroom, 206 2- to 3-bedroom apartments.
Yep.
Amenity driven. So that means pool, fitness center, clubhouse, probably a dog washing station. No, I'm just kidding, because
it actually does. It has a dog.
Because I just think that's the funniest thing.
It has a dog park and a pet washing station.
Oh, it does. I didn't look down. Yes, it does.
It does.
Okay, private workspaces and conference rooms. So that's kind of nice. So if you live there and you wanted to have a shoot like this, you could just cozy the room for the day.
Yep.
That's cool. It includes 24 affordable units.
Yep. The lottery has already taken place for those units, and I believe that they're all filled right now. It is waitlisted, but I mean, 24 affordable apartments for Groveland is massive. Like that's a lot of, for a very small town.
Yeah.
24 units is a lot. This is, if you're on Salem Street, there's like a newer self-storage place on the right. This is right near that.
Oh, okay.
So that's where that will be located.
I know where you are.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of new construction happening in Groveland, and
they got a lot of land.
Yeah, and they're actually, the town is really invested in, a housing production plan and making sure that they are, coming to the 10% affordability. So they're really pushing to get projects off the ground that that work for that.
That's great. And then the second one, do you want to talk about Garrison Village?
Yeah. Okay. Garrison Village. So this is not under construction. This is slowly going through the planning process.
Okay.
This is, if you know where the Congressional Church is off of Main Street, set back from
Congregational?
That's not what
You
I said.
said congressional.
Georgetown Congregational Church,
That's
right
better.
off of Main Street.
Yeah.
You know where that is, close to downtown.
Sort of.
What?
I don't, but that's okay.
Right. Okay. Right before you get to the light that will take you over the bridge
To Haverhill.
to Haverhill.
Yep.
There's a church.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
like a little green, and then
Yeah.
behind it there's a church.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm where you
got
are.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
kind of
there.
near 7-Star Road, like in the back would be
Yep.
7-Star Road. Okay. So they're looking to do
Age restricted.
age restricted, 62 and over, independent living only. So there's no it's not assisted.
Yeah.
45 plus 1-bedroom units, 600 to 700 square feet.
Wow.
It's a phased development, and they will all be income restricted under the low income housing tax credit.
Okay.
So right now they're looking, if I understand it correctly, to partner with someone to get it built, some kind of nonprofit. So it's in the very, very early stages, but it will all be senior, and I believe it will be under 80% AMI affordable housing in Groveland, which is great.
It's great.
Because
Great. We
yeah.
have this question all the time too
Yeah.
with seniors. I would sell my house, but where would I go? And
Right.
it seems like the towns are taking upon themselves to encourage that type of development, including rentals. I know even at I can't remember what it's called, by the train station in Newburyport.
Newburyport Crossing.
Newburyport Crossing. I know a lot of the people there are older people who sold their homes.
Oh.
Now it's expensive. It's not,
It is very expensive. Yeah.
But that's just one part of the demographic they're hitting. But clearly, it's been a success, and so others are seeing that rentals are a success. Also, rentals count towards affordable housing to a degree, so that really helps them get funded.
And also the thing is, and this is like a broader conversation, when we come to pushback from neighbors and from the community, oftentimes we see less pushback when it comes to permitting and acceptance of senior housing.
Yeah.
Because I think that the majority of the people who are vocal
Are seniors.
in the nicest way possible. The
okay.
most vocal people in these situations are seniors.
We vote. We go to town meetings.
You guys have time that maybe some of us might not have. It's true, though. The most active people in the community are typically, retired folks, because they do have the luxury of that time to get involved.
That's right.
And so they see themselves in these projects, so it's easier for them to accept it and understand it and agree with it.
I think too, part of it is that people who were born in the 1900s, as your son would say. Those of us who were born in the 1900s grew up with a different sense of what is expected of you civically.
Yeah.
And I don't know that is being imparted to kids now. Like, you have a civic responsibility to vote. You have a civic responsibility to speak your mind. I think that was more native to my generation than it is to the current one.
Okay. So
But you guys speak out.
From a younger person's
Boy, I just hit a nerve.
No, from a younger person's perspective, I think that we have had some pretty horrific things happen in our lifetime. Growing up right around 9/11 and Columbine and all this stuff. So I think that our, at least millennials, maybe even Gen Z, we are kind of disillusioned by the voting process, and I think that a lot of people in my generation think what's the point? Because it
I hear
hasn't
that
really
from kids a lot.
Yeah, it hasn't really gotten us anywhere, and it doesn't seem to matter. Whereas I think that, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I think that older generations still buy into the propaganda that their vote
mean the
matters. And
idea?
I'm not
The
saying that
idea.
it doesn't. The idea, okay, I guess the idea versus propaganda would be a better word for it.
I think so too.
But good for Groveland for these.
Good for Groveland. Okay, so let's go down to Danvers. Maple Street. That's where the modern butcher is.
Yep, right near downtown.
Right down. I actually know where that is, and
Wow.
that is 18 residential units, 12 townhomes, mixed use concept, infill near downtown, likely condo townhome ownership,
Yep,
right?
actual
So,
ownership.
and that is really close to 114 and 128. So it's a really good location.
And 60 is off of 62.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
So near the Liberty Tree Mall, which I don't know how long that'll be there. Now they have pool centers and fitness areas in there.
Okay, so I was looking into like the future of Liberty Tree Mall when I was doing this video, because I came across Danvers and I was like, oh, well, I wonder what's happening with that. Like, is it going to, like, are they going to turn it into housing? So far, I haven't been able to find anything. I think there's some whispers about making it a housing development, which honestly would not be a bad idea.
Right.
If you've been there recently, it's a pretty depressing place to go. It's
not a whole lot there beside Best Buy, and there's a kids swim club there.
Yeah, Target, Home Depot,
well, they'll stay.
Old Navy. Those are pretty much the only things that
Those are the
people
anchors,
use.
yeah.
You go inside and you're like, oh.
Empty stores everywhere.
It's like dark and seedy. And I mean,
It's like the light bulbs are out, nobody replaces them.
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, it reminds me of the Liberty Tree Mall from the 80s, except for with less people. Because remember, it was all brown tile.
We used
back
to go
then.
there all the time. Filene's Basement was there. There were all kinds of great
and
things.
people would be chain smoking. So I mean, it's not much different except for no brown tile, no people.
Yeah. So,
so this is, it currently has an industrial building on it that is not being used. And of course, like everything, there's community pushback about this. But I will say the one thing that is absolutely great about this, again, is that it's a home ownership model. This is the only project in this episode that we are covering that is actually going to be for sale and not just a condo.
Great.
I believe there's 2 affordable units. Correct me. I'll correct it on the screen if I'm wrong. But
yeah,
it's a standout because of the fact that, that's all we got.
You're right. There is
apartments.
there's a rental heavy pipeline right
Yeah,
now. And
exactly.
for good reason, but.
And then just a funny one to add
What is this, Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, while we're in Danvers. So unfortunately, the Friendly Toast in Danvers did close, the site of the former Applebee's. I love the Friendly Toast, so like I used to go there with Caleb. And so I guess they closed the, citing that there were problems with the building. I would assume that the landlord didn't want to fix. So it is going to be demolished. And there's a new 5,000 square foot Chick-fil-A that is going to be going in there. 3-lane drive-through. So fast food lane over by the Liberty Tree Mall will now be adding a Chick-fil-A. So
it'll be
exciting news.
The Golden Avenue of Chick-fil-A. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway, it shows commercial reinvestment, which is good. I know that a lot of, a lot of warehouse space is being looked at around Boston, more in the Newton, Wellesley,
commercial space,
Route 9 corridor, really.
Yeah.
They're trying to find a way because, as we've discussed before, there's a glut of commercial space
that's not being used.
Yes, people aren't going back to big offices. They're not. That whole thing is gone.
Well, the commercial real estate market has, for lack of a better term, tanked.
Yeah, there's only a few segments that have growth. Those are childcare and education and long-term storage units. So that's interesting. So I want to just back up a little bit and talk about what Chapter 40B is.
Because we touched
Keep referencing it, yes.
Yeah, we touched on it the last episode, but we didn't deep dive into it. And I misspoke a couple times in in my description of it. And I want to just clarify that I think that 40B is fantastic. I don't think that we would have many, if any, multifamily buildings in the suburbs if it wasn't for Chapter 40B. So it has done a fantastic job in the past. My criticism was, is it enough to address what's going on now? Because it was put into law in the 60s. So it's just, do we need to evolve 40B is what I meant. I didn't mean it's terrible. Let's get rid of it. So
I would say 40B, I don't think 40B is fabulous. Because what 40B is...
Yeah, so let's define it.
Yeah, so 40B, the basics.
Inclusive zoning.
So what it means is if I have a piece of property and I want to put up a 60-foot high building and the code is 35 feet only, like in Newburyport, I can go to the state and override local zoning
If
you have affordable housing in it.
yes.
So in that regard, it's great. They apply for one comprehensive permit through the ZBA. It applies when the town has under 10% affordable units. So we throw around the 10% of affordable units. Think of it this way: if the town has 10% or more of affordable units, then it doesn't have to do as much, and it's considered a
What is it? Safe harbor.
safe
Town
harbor.
gets safe
Safe
harbor.
harbor, yeah. And I'll
And
talk
they get
about
a little bit more control.
they get more control. But basically, what happens with 40B is you have to, for the projects, you have to have a public agency, nonprofit, or limited dividend developer must have an approved state or federal housing subsidy.
Yeah.
So it's for people going to the state. Typically 20 to 25% units are affordable. Affordable units must be 80% of the AMI, area median income. So what can happen is sometimes if someone came in and said, okay, I'm going to put in 120 units and it's going to be 65 feet tall, the town could come back and do what's called a friendly 40. Which is, okay, we understand you have these rights, but let's talk. Let's
So it's
compromise.
basically-
It forces a conversation.
Trying to stop them from going to the state directly and trying to work with the developer
Right.
instead. So it's not this contentious situation.
That's right.
But, okay.
But an example is when we did Federal Street, one of the developers was a 40B, and they had 120 units on that site.
That was one of the proposals.
This was one of the proposals, which wasn't accepted because no one wanted it, basically, and there were other options. But they could have done, and I think that's, if you look at the Sullivan building downtown, it's one of the only buildings that's over 35 feet high.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the things that prompted this law because that was built in the 60s. So that's interesting. And how do units count towards the 10%? All units count towards, so if you have rentals, market and affordables count towards the 10%.
But they have to be under 80% AMI to count towards the total housing.
Right.
Percent of the housing.
So it happens occasionally. I know.
That's weird. That's weird. Okay.
Well, it's a loophole that obviously people are taking advantage of.
I don't like that.
I know. Obviously, it's that people are taking advantage of it because they're building a lot of rentals. So you can see, the reaction in the private sector to a policy.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I don't know if I like it 100%, but it is producing more affordable units, which is a good thing.
Okay. I don't like that. I didn't realize that, but now.
And who controls it? HUD.
Well, no. AMI is, so we often get comments about
AMI.
the cost of the affordable units, and they're capital A affordable. They're not actually what people can really afford.
Yeah.
And there's a conversation about that because
They're not Section 8 housing. That's what we always are trying to tell people. This is a completely different thing.
So you can use a Section 8 voucher on one of these units. However, your Section 8 voucher has to cover the rent that they're asking. So it's not that you can't use a Section 8 voucher on, you absolutely can.
Okay.
Some of the units are a little too expensive, which is funny because you're like, oh, it's an affordable unit, but
then the thing that's really interesting is that the AMI is so regional. So we have a different AMI than Amesbury has.
yes, we do. And we are a part of the Boston region, which is significantly higher,
Right.
which causes a lot of problems for
That's
people. And I met the Attorney General yesterday.
Yes. Just threw that in there. Yes.
And we were talking, and I was talking about this very issue. And unfortunately for us and for everyone in the country, the AMI is controlled by the federal government. And so if we were...
So that's HUD.
That's right. That's the housing and urban development. So when people complain about, well, they're not actually affordable, like who sets these parameters? People complain that it's the state of Massachusetts. It's not. It's the federal government who sets the income limits.
So the problem if you have a high income area is that 80% is really high. So it really isn't geared towards affordable at all.
Right.
So the rent could be $2,700. It's not, whereas in Amesbury it would be less.
Right. But typically speaking, one bedroom, 80% AMI unit is about well, I'll say two bed because I don't know what the one bedroom is, but like a 2-bedroom apartment is typically, I don't know, anywhere from $2,100 to $2,600.
Do you want to throw the chart up on the screen too? That shows that, yeah. Because it's interesting to look at the chart for Amesbury and Newburyport. So we'll throw that up too, so you can see what the difference is. So yeah,
that's it. That's basically what 40B is. So when someone wants to build something that's denser or a kind of project that would require them to go through all these loopholes through the city, they can override the city and go to the state if they
Correct.
if they have a certain percentage of affordable housing
and have some agency backing.
Right. So that's kind of the background on 40B. So if you hear us talking about 40B in the future, now you know.
Yep, and
this
you
is
know
what
the I keep forgetting what they're called.
Safe
Harbor. Newburyport's a safe harbor. Amesbury is not yet.
Okay.
So Amesbury will be, though, shortly, I think, because of all that they've got going on over there.
I just want to make a correction from last episode, too, about this. I was incorrect. I know about Newbury having 0 affordable housing.
Yeah, that's wrong.
They have 3 to 4%, which is significantly under the 10% that they need to be at. But the units are
mostly age restricted, though, aren't they?
Most of them are age restricted. There's a couple here and there kind of scattered.
Yep.
What happened was I looked I tried to find the names of the actual, like I went on Newbury's website and I said, the town website said, hey, like I'm trying to find what the affordable units are, and there was no listing for them, but there is a state database. You can track them by going to SHI, which is the Subsidized Housing Inventory.
Oh, cool. So that shows you what's out there, what's happening, what's online.
Yeah, like what each town has. And then towns that are under the 10% typically have to have an affordable housing trust or at least a housing production plan to get them in compliance and get them to that 10% threshold, because the state is really going to push cities and towns to come up to that 10% number.
Good. That's excellent. Well, another day, another episode.
Yeah, so join us on the next one.